Good morning. Welcome to the program. Today is Thursday, November 12th, 2020. And if you're looking for a bunch of really good, optimistic news, then this is probably not going to be the broadcast for you to watch because there isn't any good news. So, personally, any items on a calendar outside of my home, including seeing family, and a handful of social interactions that I had on my calendar for some time, I am going to cancel until further notice because we are in a tremendous amount of trouble. And there isn't anything that I can say that will be able to convince people more than the numbers that exist. And maybe I should have talked about the coronavirus more often, with more frequency, with more urgency. But I don't know if that would have made any kind of difference. I'm not necessarily making this conversation today, in which all of you are welcome to participate in. It's not really about today. It's about for what is going to happen in the future and the people that are going to be affected in the future by the lack of action that we all took today. For the people that we are going to hurt, that by all accounts, we didn't mean to hurt. It was not our intention to have a negative impact on you, but we are going to have a negative impact on you. And for those people, I am deeply, deeply sorry. We are fast approaching a point in the state of Wisconsin where hospitals will not be able to save people that need critical emergency care. And while I can go on blaming the president and I can blame Republicans, I can blame politics, that's not going to save anyone who is going to get sick and not survive from the coronavirus and COVID 19. So I could do all of that blaming, but what good would it actually do? In fact, I think the conversation about politics is entirely out of place. And then if there ever is some kind of a treatment or a cure for the coronavirus because of how we found out about it and how it has been so politicized by both left and right and non-political alike, it has had a negative effect on people's understanding of what the medical treatment is going to be for something that is going to kill, quite honestly, an unlimited number of people. And for that, I am sorry too. The lonely place about being in the political middle is you can see the danger and the arguments on both sides of this equation. And I think when some time passes, I hope that we realize how ridiculous we all have been. And I participated in some of the ridiculousness. Like I got some odd satisfaction with bashing Trump supporters. It clearly didn't do any good. I like to think that the election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris was a wonderful thing that happened in the year 2020, and I suppose that it was. But I think that is us lowering our standard. You guys understand that there could not have been another option? There could not have been the realization that Donald Trump got elected to a second term. So saying that, and I'm not going to get into the details of who voted and why they voted. I do know this, that there was a decision that was made by an awful lot of people, some of whom you did not hear from until they voted in large numbers in the state of South Carolina. But there was a decision made by people who I believe are capable of making such decisions of saving this republic. All the sacrifices that are made by some people to get very little credit, to still get discriminated against, to still get disrespected, to still not have fair treatment in really any sphere of American public life. But for those people to make a decision in which we communicated it, not necessarily publicly, not necessarily privately, but in ways that only we could understand, that we had to save this republic from itself, and we did that willingly. And so the election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris didn't shock me, it didn't surprise me, it didn't have me out there jubilating in the streets because it just could not have been any other way. And so I guess I was somewhat relieved. There are three things that I'm going to personally take away from this year, assuming that we all make it out of it. Three very specific things, and they're not exactly political. Things that have changed me forever, and then however many years I get after the year 2020, these are going to be the three things that are going to stick with me and that I'm going to remember most. Because a lot of the day to day stuff that we did this year, we're probably not going to remember. There's going to be a handful of things that might be etched in our memories, especially those really painful, trying, and emotional things that we have dealt with this year. And everybody has had their issues they've dealt with. But there's three for me, and I'm sure you may have more. I'm sure you may have less than three issues. I noticed it's a collective misery that exists. And depending upon who you talk to, they'll give you their reasons as to why they're really, really unhappy. It could be because life didn't work out the way it was supposed to, because they were promised some things, or they believed in something and that belief turned out to be a lie, a disappointment, or it just didn't come to fruition. And maybe they believed in other people and they were disappointed by other people, or they thought that things would just naturally get better. And they're just very miserable. People are very unhappy. Not everybody, but far more people than I ever imagined are just unhappy. There isn't really much that I can say to those people except that, on some level, I probably can relate to something that you are going through. But then there are others who I have noticed is if I take a step back and try and be objective about things, they're looking for a way out, but they don't want to do it the way people, normally want to check out. Like they're not going to take their lives intentionally, but they've had enough and they're fed up, and things are not getting better and they're getting worse, and they can't enjoy life like they used to. They can't see friends and family like they used to. Their businesses are closed. Their businesses may not reopen. And if you do want to reopen, you have all these very strict rules and strict guidelines. It's very antithetical to why they opened a business anyway. It is antithetical to free enterprise. And keep in mind, some people may have already been struggling with something already, and then you have this. And so those people who have been looking for a way out because they're fed up, and maybe it's not even a conscious decision. Maybe they're not saying consciously, I'm done, I want to check out. But subconsciously, that is exactly how they are living their lives. They're ready to be done. It could be the increase in drug overdoses that we're seeing, because getting high is a way out. We can have a million and one different conversations about the economic benefits of legalizing marijuana and the positive effects it can have on the criminal justice system. And we can look at the racial disparities and all these other things. The bottom line is people want to get high to escape from something. Maybe it's to escape from pain, but they still want to escape from something. And most of the country feels that exact same way. They want to escape from something. We can't escape you from your reality, but at least you can get high and pretend like this pain does not exist, or mask it for a little while. This is not a cure, but it will help shadow some of the symptoms. If people are going to go out, they're going to go out on their own terms. They're going to live their life. They're not going to wear a mask. They're going to pretend like the coronavirus isn't real, even though they know it's real, even though everyone knows it's real, even though you know it's real. Because they've been looking for a way out anyway. And if they're going to go out, they're going to go out on their own terms. And for the people that will be negatively impacted in the future by these behaviors right now, and people's willingness to want to check out, for that, I am sorry. Have a story here from the Journal Sentinel that it really probably doesn't even matter if I read it. Wisconsin is approaching a point where its hospitals may not be able to save everyone who needs saving as the coronavirus continues to surge and overwhelm the state's healthcare system, healthcare officials said yesterday. We're very close to a tipping point, Ryan Westergaard, State Department of Health Services Chief Medical Officer, said during an event hosted by Wisconsin Health News. This could get much worse quickly, and that tipping point is when we stop being able to save everyone who gets severely ill. Fatality rates for people who become ill with COVID-19 are remaining relatively low, Westergaard said, but the coronavirus patients who require hospitalization are growing at a pace that may soon affect the healthcare system's ability to treat everyone else. If that happens, people will die unnecessarily, he said. So there's nothing that I can tell any of you that will mitigate that, because some will still lean on the fact that the death rates are low. Even if the death rate is 1%, that's 10 people per thousand. That's 100 people per 100,000. That is 1,000 people per million. There are 340, 350 million people in this country, and you can do the math on that. So there isn't anything that I'm going to say other than a whole bunch of regret that maybe I should have used more time early on to drive home the seriousness of this, but we only have so many hours in the day, and a lot of my year was dedicated to politics, and some of that I regret, because I don't know if it was necessary to dedicate as much time and as much effort as I did to, hating Donald Trump or whatever it was. In the end, none of that is going to matter. It's just going to be an asterisk somewhere that nobody's going to read, a footnote in history that, oh, there's a bunch of people that hated Donald Trump. He lost the election. What's the next thing that we're going to talk about? That's basically going to be it. Now, his mark on American history is going to be noted, certainly. But then there are things that will persist, and the misery that will persist, and the pain that will persist, and people ignoring doctors and medical advice because they are looking for a way out. Those things are much more durable than a Trump presidency. The first thing that I am going to take away from this year, and there could be a lot of different things, because it's like I felt different every day I woke up. It's like, what's next? What do we have to deal with now? It's been that kind of a year, and the year's not over yet. But of the most profound emotions that I've felt, I have to start with the murder of George Floyd, which is forever etched in my mind. And it wasn't that this particular officer involved murder that played out on a camera for the world to see was any worse or more egregious or more callous than any other. But it was how it was displayed and how his murder polarized people. We got to a point where people were justifying this man losing his life. It is like the most disgusting thing that I have ever seen. And even people that I thought I knew, people that I thought were maybe friends, possibly acquaintances, have their opinions on this man's murder. But then the other thing, and this is why I'm very upset with myself, and I've been thinking really long and hard about this, because I don't want to become one of those kinds of people. You can call me a bunch of names. I've been called every name you can imagine, but I don't want to become one of those kind of people that is so callous and careless that some human beings are expendable because we don't like them, we don't agree with them, or because they have been accused of a crime in the past. I don't want to be one of those people. But the thing that I really didn't like about myself, that I really had to grapple with, was how I was unusually aroused by the violence that I saw break out in American streets. How I thought that this was the great revenge of the oppressed Black people, and this is what cities got when they burn to the ground and go ahead and tear stuff up because we built it, and whatever other excuse I could give as to why this was justified behavior. I know it is anger. I know there are a lot of people who deal with what we saw with George Floyd every single day. It can happen to just about anybody that looks like me on any day of the week. But for me to be enticed by destruction is something I do not like about myself. This was not supposed to be revenge on innocent people that have been fighting the good fight. They were just as outraged by George Floyd as anybody else, because they suffered great loss too, and destruction too, and a loss of trust in their fellow Americans, and a loss of trust in law enforcement. And I didn't like how for a moment it was exciting for me to see that kind of destruction. Now, I'm going to have to deal with that. But watching a man lose his life the way he lost it, and to see the reactions to it, because it seemed like, and maybe it was because everybody was shuttered at home and there was a level of anxiety because of that too, because you couldn't go out and go to Applebee's and go to barbecues, and we were losing our Memorial Day because the pandemic was raging on. There was some of that. And everybody had an opinion, especially if you're glued to your device and there's a comment box on every post that someone can make, and you can give your opinion by hiding behind a keyboard like a coward. People had a lot of very dangerous opinions, but I had dangerous opinions too, thinking that America deserves some kind of major retribution. We can feel that way, that, and I wasn't the only one that was excited when things were being destroyed, because that's what these cities get. And then all of a sudden we can dig in the Google crates and, well, this city has a history of racial violence against black people, so it should be turned, burned to the ground. And there are a lot of black people that echoed that sentiment, that this is what America gets. You've done it to us for so many years, now we're going to do it to you. And we stood with like this arrogant sense of pride that there can be a tremendous amount of destruction, where people who have worked their entire lives for these businesses, and we're not talking about mega corporations, like Microsoft was fine, Google was fine, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, they were all fine. Big corporations didn't really lose much. They just found a new way to market. That's all. But to get some kind of satisfaction from that. But then at the same time, have black people decide that collectively we're going to vote in a better than 85 or 90% number to remove Donald Trump is it's a beautiful irony that helps explain our unexplainable existence in this nation. Being African and being American, like African, just that whole part is confusing. We're not a whole continent, but we're also not really American either. So let's just combine the two as a catch-all term. It's like we can hate America, but then do something collectively as black people, as a black culture, as a black community, to save the country that we hate and we sometimes fetishize in its destruction. It's so duplicitous and it'll drive you crazy if you let it. But George Floyd and how I felt in the aftermath of that murder is something I'm forever going to take away from this year. The other thing is much more personal. One of my best friends, Samar Assad, committed suicide in June. The stresses of life and his businesses were shuttered, and he was a new father, married to a beautiful woman, and he took his life, and it was unexpected for some of us, but there were others that saw the writing on the wall. What made it so tough for me, and this is not at all about me, and it's about those who struggle and don't see a way out, and those who are struggling who see their way out of living their best life during a pandemic and hoping deep in their minds that this pandemic gets them too, so they can check out of the pain that they are experiencing in this life. Pain that may have been exacerbated by the pandemic, or pain they may have had their entire life because they've struggled. They've struggled with poverty, they've struggled with abuse, they've struggled with something, and they're using this moment as their way to check out. But Sam sent me a message, a goodbye message, the day before he took his life. And it was very unusual to me because it wasn't him. He listed a bunch of very trivial things that he apologized for. I'm like, who cares? Oh, so what? I don't like, are you okay? Is everything all right? Should I call you? And if you need me, if you want to talk, I'm here. And I didn't hear from him again. The next news that I got was that he took his life. For 3 solid days straight, 72 hours, while at home, shuttered because of the pandemic. I was inconsolable because you wonder if you could have done something. And then I'm hearing from other people that also knew him very well and knew that he and I had a very good friendship. And then when those other people said, you know what, Sherwin, you probably could have stopped him. And I don't know if they meant that as a compliment, but I did not take it as such. But that's something that I'm never going to erase from my mind. The message that he sent me was a goodbye. You don't want to hear a goodbye like that, but then don't we sometimes want warning when we're going to have great loss so we can begin to prepare? Because when you lose somebody and it's really totally, completely out of left field and very unexpected, something very random, if you've ever lost somebody in such a shocking fashion, you wish that you knew, you wish that you had time to say goodbye. Even if you have time to say goodbye, it doesn't make it any easier. The next thing that I'm going to take away from this year, and none of this stuff is political, and none of this is, yay, Joe Biden won. He had to. I wish that I could be jubilant about that, but for me, there was no other option. So one of the great things that I take away from this year, it really isn't the presidential race. If something even more powerful than Joe Biden's victory and Kamala Harris's history making stride to be the first Black woman to be a vice president was how the campaigns destroyed us. Probably more impactful than the election itself. I mean, the election in my mind was already decided. Some of us knew what we had to do, and it was against the wishes of other people. And I think maybe that bothers me too, because everybody had to give you an excuse. They had to tell you how much they hated the alternative to a racist. They had to think of they had to go back as far as they could in history. And people don't care about history. Americans don't care about history, but all of a sudden you got to go back in history to make yourself look smart, to make yourself look like your point is valid and how much you hate Joe Biden. He's not this and he's not that. That was very telling to me. And what I did is I used to argue with people and say, well, but look at the alternative. And I would try and use logic. Logic doesn't work anymore. When people that are educated and have advanced degrees all of a sudden don't believe in the science of immunotherapy and don't believe in the science of virology and don't believe in a coronavirus vaccine, logic doesn't exist. I live in a country where logic doesn't exist. Even people that have used logic to become successful in this world, when it comes to certain things, logic doesn't exist. It's like we get to pick and choose what we want to believe. Okay, I'm not here to argue that point. I was probably about a month ago, and I wanted to tell you guys when it happened, but I was going to keep it a secret because you don't tell everybody everything. I mean, I tell you all enough as it is. It's gotten me in trouble over the years. But this one I wasn't going to tell you, but as I'm reflecting on the things that will impact me for the rest of my life. And I'm more afraid of the coronavirus right now than any time before. And I'm gonna be honest with you. In the early days, it was cute, staying at home, ordering DoorDash, watching Tiger King on Netflix. This too shall pass. This won't be that big of a deal. In fact, I needed a little time at home. I needed the world to slow down a little bit so I could catch up because the coronavirus and the shutdowns had slowed the world down. And when you slow the world down just a little bit, you slow down the opposition, don't you? You slow down your competition a little bit, gives you a chance to get some rest and get to catch up to your competition a little bit. So everybody needs to slow down. That's why I like rainy days. I get to catch up a little bit on things when it's rainy. On sunny, beautiful days, there's all this pressure to be out and do all these other things and get all this stuff done. No, I like it when the world is a little bit slower. It's a much more manageable pace. But this thing that happened a couple weeks ago, I was every Sunday, as you guys know, I go to my parents' house. My parents are getting older, and they're in good health, considering, I guess, being Black people in their 70s. So we have Sunday dinner. So routine Sunday, right? It's the highlight of my week, actually. Get to hang out with my parents and just listen to an old married Black couple that have a level of wisdom that you just don't get anywhere else. And so we had dinner. I'm on my way home. And sometimes I drive through the neighborhoods of Brown Deer where I grew up, the streets where I used to ride my skateboard and ride my bike. And it's amazing because the people have changed in those houses. But I remember the kids that, moved to Brown Deer in third grade or fifth grade. And, Steve used to live here. Wendy lived on this house on the corner, and the houses look exactly like they did in my childhood. It's like the neighborhood I grew up in is completely frozen in time. And sometimes that seeing things that haven't changed gives a sense of great comfort because the world has spun out of control, but there are certain places that look exactly like they did when I was a child. And so I'm driving through the neighborhood on my way back home. When I'm approaching this stop sign on one of these side streets in one of these Brown Deer neighborhoods that I used to ride my bike and ride my skateboard. It's Silverbrook is the street, and then I'm about to turn on 60th Street to go south to go back home. As I'm looking down the street, and I see a lot of traffic going both north and south on 60th Street. An unusual amount of traffic for a Sunday, but you never know what people are up to on Sundays. But then on the right side of the street, there's a sidewalk. You know how there's the wheelchair ramp where there's a curb and then they flatten the curb and then there's a wheelchair ramp for those that are in wheelchairs are able to roll up the curb and get onto the sidewalk. And as I'm driving toward the stop sign of 60th Street and Silverbrook, where I'm about to turn right and go south, headed back home, I see a man in a wheelchair, and he's struggling to ascend the steep incline of the sidewalk. I see him, he's struggling, and then he holds his position and then he rolls backwards because the sidewalk incline is too steep. And as I'm driving closer toward where he is, there's just cars that are driving past. They're just driving past, both north and south. They're driving past. And I'm thinking, well, they're gonna help him. Because I'm watching, he like 3 or 4 times. He ascends partly up the sidewalk and then he rolls back. I was like, I'm not the only one seeing this. There's a theory called social loafing. If something happens, if there's a crime being committed or something terrible is happening, and there are other people that we witness that are also witnessing this thing, and it may not be a crime, it could be someone that needs help. It could be somebody crying for help. Somebody cries for help in a big city. Does anybody hear it? Social loafing says if we see somebody that needs help, and then there are other people that also see that person that need help. If we hear somebody yelling out of their window that they need help, and we know there are other people that can hear that cry for help, just like we hear it, we don't do anything because we think somebody else is going to help. So we don't do anything. Well, somebody else is seeing this person struggle. Somebody else is hearing this individual's cry for help. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to inconvenience myself for a second because somebody else is going to help. And as I get to the stop sign, and there's just cars, a dozen cars had driven past this man, and nobody helped him. I got to the stop sign and I paused and he's struggling and he tries to roll up this incline on 60th Street and Silverbrook. He's trying to roll down the sidewalk, which is right next to 60th Street, and he keeps rolling backwards. He's struggling. And I was like, screw it. I made my right turn on 60th Street and I was headed home because someone is going to help him. And as I continue on my way, I can see in my rearview mirror that he is still struggling to get up the sidewalk. He's still rolling up part of the way and then he rolls backwards because the incline was just too steep. And I hit a U-turn. God damn it. Turn around and I parked my vehicle right at the stop sign. So if a car would have been behind me, they just would have had to wait. Good if a car was behind me and they would get upset that I would park my car at a stop sign. I rolled my window down. I asked him, I said, sir, you need some help? And he said, yes. So I put my mask on and I got out my vehicle and I grabbed the handles of his wheelchair. And I thought that it was because I saw how he was struggling. I figured it was because the incline was kind of steep, and I figured that I was probably going to struggle a little bit too. And so I grabbed the handles of his wheelchair, a regular manual wheelchair, not a motorized wheelchair. And I grabbed the handles and then I pushed him up the incline and got him onto the flat surface of the sidewalk so then he could go on about his business. And I asked him if he was good. And he kept saying, thank you. And he had a speech impediment as well. He had, it looked like a few disabilities, not just physical. but his speech was also affected by his condition. As I'm walking back to my vehicle, my window was still down because I rolled my window down to originally ask him if he needed help. I get back in my vehicle, put it in drive, and he's still saying thank you. And I make my right turn to get on to 60th Street because I am headed home from visiting my parents. And as I'm driving away, my window is still down and he's still saying thank you. I cried the whole way home. Not because I felt sorry for him, because I'd imagine the challenges that he may face in a minute of a day are more challenges that I may face in a year. I got sad because nobody helped him. What has happened to us? What has happened to this world to where we have become so cold and callous that we can't take 30 seconds and other people saw him and they didn't do anything? I never wanted to tell that story because it's just, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to help somebody. It didn't cost me anything. I wasn't in a hurry. I was only going home to stay in my house to be quarantined. I didn't have anything to do. And maybe other people were just that busy, or maybe they didn't care. I don't care what your politics are. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care if you didn't vote. I don't care if you think Joe Biden is a racist and Donald Trump is a racist and you didn't vote and you're giving me all these excuses. Why are so few of us just good people? Have we lost those principles as well? Like, what has happened to us? Do I live in a world where we can politicize the murder of a black man? Do I live in a world where people will be so incredibly selfish that they will not protect themselves and their communities and their neighborhoods by wearing a mask and staying at home? Do I live in that world? Do I live in a world where someone who is struggling to roll themselves in a wheelchair, someone who clearly doesn't have the luxury of being able to use their legs? Do I live in a world where we see that and cannot take a moment out of our day to help somebody? What has happened to us? Good morning, everybody who's saying good morning. What do we do? Like, how do you tell people to be good people? You can't. I don't know. Thank you guys. I'm not over here trying to get sympathy. I'm worried. I'm worried that we're doing an awful lot of damage that may be permanent to where we think that we are separated from other human beings. You know, I've tried to make the case that, no, we're all the same, and clearly we're not. And it has nothing to do with race or culture or gender or sexual orientation. It has nothing to do with that. You think I asked that man if he was gay or straight? You think I asked him how he felt about illegal immigration when I helped him up the sidewalk? I didn't care. I wonder if those people who were driving past him, and I was almost one of them, I could have gone on about my business and I could have justified it by saying, well, eventually somebody's going to help him. I watched him make 4 or 5 attempts at trying to get up this wheelchair ramp that was way too steep. And those of you who may be connected to city planners in Brown Deer, you guys got to fix that ramp because it's too steep. I should never have to see that ever again. Someone who has trouble getting up a wheelchair ramp because it's too steep. I should never see that. I'm wondering why there should have been a line of people to help him. He kept saying thank you. That echoed in my mind for days. I'm thinking to myself, the effort that I put in to assisting this man get on his way was nothing. It was nothing. but to him it meant something. And I wonder if we have just normalized a kind of coldness and callousness to other people. Because if that is the case, then the apology that I need to make for the future that may have to live in a world where we set this tone of just meanness, I am sorry. That's not what we intended. We just wanted to, like, I don't know, have money and go on vacation and have a barbecue. And I didn't know that the unintended consequences would be just hatred. Some of the people that drove past this man, I don't know what his name is. I don't know anything about him. It doesn't matter who he is. I don't care. Some of them voted for Donald Trump. Some of them voted for Joe Biden. Some of them probably have a sign that say Black Lives Matter. Some of them were protesting in the streets. Some of them are probably very outspoken on social media about equality and about fairness and about justice. Some of them drink out of rainbow flag cups. But you didn't help one person when you all had an opportunity, because I know people saw him. Meaning that all of your yelling and screaming and protesting and preaching about fairness and equality, black, white, gay, straight, legal, illegal, born in America, not born in America, it doesn't matter if you can't exercise the most minimal shred of decency. This is the world I live in. This is the world that we share. And so when you don't have that basic level of compassion for someone that can't even walk, then maybe the coronavirus's natural selection that is just going to take some people away. Thank you, Denise. We probably do need to have more conversations like this, but Star Xavier Mom says people are cold and selfish now. It's extremely sad when you think about it. And I always try to figure out the why. I try because it helps me sleep at night. I didn't sleep last night, by the way, at all. So you know how you wake up in the middle of the night and sometimes you go back to sleep, sometimes you have breakfast. I think I woke up at 2:30 and I was like, well, I'm kind of hungry. Let's start the day. Bad idea. I hadn't even really completed the night and I already started my day. I don't know how you fix any of that. You know, but like people go to church and they're religious, and church was a big deal because for a while people couldn't go to church. And I'm all for people's whatever religion you want to practice. Totally cool with me. If it helps you become a good person, I don't care what religion you are or what religion you are not. If it makes you the kind of person that will take 30 seconds out of your day to help push someone on the sidewalk, then whatever religion you must follow to be that person, then I want you to be a part of that religion. But if you are a part of a religion so you can be a good person and you believe you're a good person, but you will not help somebody in need, you need to stop going to church. Just don't go. Most people that go to church, a lot of them, I shouldn't say most people, they don't want to go anyway. I never understood that. You ever hear people complaining about going to church? Oh, I got to go to Sunday service, because there's this social pressure to practice religion, this relationship that you have with God that needs to be recognized and realized in a community of people. Because if you don't go to church, then the church people think there's something wrong with you. And if you don't go to church and then the next week you go to church and people ask, where was you last week? I need you to help me understand something about that. Because if you don't want to go to church, isn't the God that you have a personal relationship with? I'm assuming that your relationship with God is more personal than it is communal. Like, can you only worship God when you're in his house of worship? Is that the only time you believe in God? Or do you believe in God when you're outside of that building? Most hours of the day, most days of the week, most days in the month and days in the year, you're not at church. So do you not believe in God then? But if it doesn't make you a good person, then why are you going? And also, the God that you believe in, that probably believes in you, because everybody will tell you when the prayers have been answered, everybody's real quick to ask for a prayer or to give a prayer. I'm going to pray for you. They say, you pray for me. God has answered my prayers, usually for something really materialistic, like, oh, they got a bunch of money, or they got an income tax check, or they got something that they worked for and that they deserved, and they thank God for it. Okay, cool. But doesn't God also know that you don't want to go to church, that you're inconvenienced by going to church because it's cold outside? You'd rather stay in bed. So why are you going? Especially if it's not making you a good person. If that's why you go, because you want to be a better person, but you don't want to go because it's inconvenient and it's gossipy and you got to dress a certain way, especially in the black church, then why are you even going? God knows you don't want to go. He'd probably be cool with you having more sanity by staying home than going to church and have to participate in the mental anguish of the gossipers at church. I never understood that. It is not a pure and holy place. And people will tell you that it is. It's not. We all know about certain pastors in this city, and I'm just going to leave that alone. Thank you, Sahara Ali. Appreciate it. Thank you, Alden. You're an awesome guy. I've been in the same situation before. It's quite sad because there's nothing I can do about it. You know, and maybe that's what it is. And maybe I'm over here feeling sorry for myself. I don't care. This is going to live on the internet and people are going to bash it all over the place. I could care less. Talking to you guys and talking to people that I've been talking to since I first tasted radio when I was in college. They had a college radio station at UW Oshkosh, and it was just unmanaged and ridiculous. And they let the foxes run the hen house, and everybody in the dorms would listen to, because there's some people that lived on our dorm floor that were in the radio, TV, film program at Oshkosh, and they had a radio show where they played crappy music and did a weather forecast. And then they invited me to join them on the radio. This is like in, geez, like 95, probably 96. And instead of doing the weather forecast, because this was actually a part of their class to do this radio show, which sucked. Sorry, guys, if you're listening. I'm friends with a lot of people that I went to college with, but the radio show sucked. And so they invited me to come to the college campus radio station. And instead of doing the weather forecast, I did the weather flowcast, where I tried to rhyme the weather. And I just ended up not talking about the weather, because you can't rhyme the weather. It's the words you use to talk about the weather don't. And so I would just rhyme a bunch of stupid words. And it was fun. But then, when I got back to the dorms, the number of people that were entertained by that made me feel some kind of way. I was like, oh, wow, I'm an idiot. And you guys thought it was funny. And then when I went to Jammin' 98.3 from 2008 until 2010, there was an old school basement party show, an old school hip hop show, where we didn't really talk much, but when we did crack the mics open, we just told jokes. And I guess I can admit this now because it was 12 years ago. Most nights when we were doing that show, we were drunk, because who cares? We were there for 3 hours on a Friday, 3 hours on a Saturday, and we played the best old school hip hop ever for 3 hours straight. And every 20 minutes, we would just turn the mics on and talk about music, and mostly talk about each other. And we were very drunk most of the time. It was so much fun. And then the people that found me at WNOV, and to some extent, some of you are here right now. I thank you, because you guys have been my therapy, because I've talked about everything. Some necessary conversations, a lot unnecessary, but the privilege to be able to talk and to get it off my chest has been my therapy. You know how many people can't talk about their feelings and how many people are dying inside because of it? It's those simple luxuries in life that I really appreciate. Some people can never tell you how they feel. I have a problem because I'll tell you too much of how I feel. Sometimes I try to, keep it in. For what? I'm only hurting myself. Denise Jones, sure, when we need to care more about other people, I've done similar actions for a person. It has something to do with the people we are. Heartbreaking that we don't care enough about people. You don't really, you don't teach that. Do you? I mean, I guess I come from a family that dedicates a lot of time to service. Like my grandmother, before she passed away, the matriarch of our family. If you hear Black people talk like about their mothers and their grandmothers and this foundation, and it's not just Black people. I mean, it's probably some of everybody, but in our families specifically, because the Black women that we all pat on the back because they're the backbone of the Democratic Party, they also are the matriarchs of Black families, Black communities, and Black cultures. They are. We have a matriarchal lineage that goes all the way back to Africa, and that exists still right now. So we have this deep-seated affection for our mothers and our grandmothers and just the women in our families. So, and the women in my family, my grandmother, she would, until she was like in her 90s, she would go like bake pies for sick people in the hospital. And we're like, shouldn't they be coming to visit you and bringing you pies? But as long as she was able bodied and had breath in her lungs, and she never drove. So she'd have to have somebody drive her to the hospital where she would bake stuff for people. Because she just, she was that kind of person. And so I think just her actions had an influence on my aunts, my uncle, and of course my mother. And so it's just something that you do naturally when you can help somebody, especially. And here's the thing, when it takes no effort on your part, when it doesn't cost you anything, why would you not help somebody? If you know something that can benefit somebody else and you already know it, it's benefited you. Why wouldn't you tell somebody else? That's the part I don't get. And I try to apply logic to everything. And that is where my logic just falls short. I don't know what it is. And maybe it's misery loves company. It's almost like people that are married and miserable are always telling single people that they need to get married too. I never hear happy couples encouraging other people to get married. I hear happy couples talking about how happy they are in their marriage and their situation. They're not saying, oh, this marriage has made us happy. It has nothing to do with that. But miserable people want to encourage marriage. Am I the only one that notices that? Denise Jones says kindness should be a part of religious practice, but does not make you a good person, a kind person. I don't know about, because religions are kind of the same but different. If that makes any sense, it probably did not make any sense. But they all stress positive things, like don't kill. It's a low bar, but do things, be charitable, help your fellow person, and they're pretty consistent in that. Like, be a charitable, decent human. But what I have seen in your experiences may vary. Is some of the most sinister, ruthless, conniving, backstabbing, evil human beings cling to a Bible more than they cling to anything else. It's almost like they know that they can ask for forgiveness to be the bad people that they are because they're conscious in some of the evil things they think and they feel, and they're vengeful and they're spiteful. But because they go to church and because they're practicing something, they use that as this pedestal of righteousness. And I see through that. And I think that is why religion has fallen short, because of the tens of millions of people that are a part of a denomination or a part of an organized religion in this country. It doesn't seem like their effect of decency and kindness has positively impacted this country overwhelmingly. We love God in this country. God is everywhere. God is on the money. We're a capitalist country, and every bit of tender, every bit of currency we have in this country, if you want to buy something, it's got in God we trust on the money, which means that in a capitalist country like this one, every time you buy, exchange, sell, or return something, you see the word God. Has no effect whatsoever on the general psyche of this country. And I can't even say that I think, oh, the majority of Americans are good. I have to find something specific that an American may do on one day and then say they're good because of that. And the standard has been lowered. Like, oh, you voted? You're a good person. But all the other moments and seconds and minutes and hours in the day, you're just a dreadful, miserable human being that doesn't care about your community or anybody else. But you voted, so yay, you're a voter. Thank everybody for voting. We got to raise the standard. We need to hold people to a much higher account. But I don't know if we can do that. Justin says, I know so many people who claim to be Christian, but would have passed that person in the wheelchair. As Tammy said, they can't even be bothered to wear a mask. It can very easily, because I've had those conversations before where everything turns anti-religion. I can't do that either, because there are some folks, it's like good cops. They're out there. There's a lot of them. As unicorny as they may be, there's good cops out there. Like there's good Catholics and good Lutherans, good Baptists, real good Episcopalians. They're out there somewhere, and maybe that's the majority of them. But you may not hear from them as often, there's people that will commit terrible crimes against one another that'll tell you their denomination and they were baptized and everything else. And so I don't think that religion has anything to do with the spirit of the human being. And I say that because if you are not part of a religious order, whatever it is, then those that are look down on you. And not all of them. Some of them have like this passive aggressive kind of hate toward you, like, oh, they just haven't been saved yet. There's still hope for you, Sherwin. Sherwin, where's your church home? I don't know. My studio? Sherwin, Sherwin, what church you go to? And maybe this is a Black thing because we don't really talk about it as much anymore. What church? Because your church is like your clique. It's really terrible. It is. What church you belong to? Oh, because there's certain churches, that cater to the Black community where people have more money. Or if you make a lot of money, like this is the church you go to. Or, some of the smaller storefront churches that are considerably less prestigious, I would argue much closer to God, but less prestigious. Even the people that are a part of a religious order in this city, and I can't speak for your city, wherever you're listening from, they look down on other people based upon what they know about the income level of the people that attend that church. That in and of itself invalidates your understanding of religion. But I don't want to turn this into, anti-religion. But for those that are very faithful in their practice, and I know wonderful pastors, gone to basketball games with pastors before. They're surprisingly normal people. They even sometimes drink beer. Some of them can even get married. Who knew? But for those that are a part of the flock that look down on other people because they don't attend church services regularly, and a lot of times the people that are a part of these church services, they don't want to be there anyway. They complain about it. Oh, I got to go to this Bible study. But don't go. Just tell. Like the pastor will expect you to come to, like, there's a bunch of different social activities. I don't want to make this about church, but clearly this is what I'm stuck on right now. And then you don't show up for something because maybe you just didn't feel like going. Maybe you didn't feel well. You didn't want to go to the church meeting. You didn't want to go to Bible study. And then everybody's real mad or disappointed at you. So when you show up on Sunday, if you show up on Sunday, where were you at the Bible study church meeting on Wednesday? And you can just be like, oh, no, I talked to God. And God was like, it's totally cool if I stay home. People would get mad at you for saying that. Jay Trilla says, why do Republicans and Trump accept the House and Senate election results? Not presidential. They were on the same ballots. Jay, I'll be honest with you at this moment. I don't care. Don't care. I don't care what Republicans think. I don't care. I'll probably care later or tomorrow. I'll guarantee I'm going to care tomorrow. Right now, I don't care. I don't care about Democrats or not Democrats or people that voted for Joe Biden. Like it was the most painful goddamn thing they've ever done in their life. And they had to tell everybody, voted for Joe. Oh, God, I hated it. He's a racist. Then listen, you're not going to hear me say this that often. If it tortures you that much to vote against a racist that wants to see people like me dead, okay? If it pains you that much, don't vote. Don't ever vote. Don't ever vote in another election for the rest of your life if you have got to just agonize over your horrible choices. Don't vote. And maybe we lose some people. Maybe we lose some elections because I just said that. Then I'd rather lose that election. Don't do it. If you're gonna have to agonize over good versus evil and you really got to think about it, or then you do something like, maybe a third party can help. Don't vote. Don't don't bother to. It's a lot of trouble. You have to know how to fill in a circle or touch a touch screen. You have to have an ID. It's too much. You might have to go to a place that's, I don't know, a few goddamn blocks from your house. You may have to use the mail. You may have to have something signed on an envelope. You might have to put your name on something. It's too much. Don't do it. Alleviate yourself of the inconvenience and the stress of voting. Now, those of us that are going to vote are going to make decisions on your behalf, and you're going to take it. You're just going to love it. Don't want to hear from you. Don't say anything. Don't post on social media. You don't get that right anymore. Just be quiet and let us decide on your behalf. If it's that difficult for you to have a say so, because when you buy things, you're making a company rich $1 at a time, but you can't help fortify a better America one vote at a time, then I don't want to talk to you about that anymore. If another person has to come to me and say, Sherwin, why should I vote? I'm going to tell you not to. Don't. Because if I looked at other things in your life, non-voter, you probably have a whole bunch of other stuff that may not be able to be fixed by one vote in one direction or another. So I'd rather you sort that stuff out. And when you get that stuff sorted out, then come back to us. And then your vote will make much more sense, not just to me, but to you. So sort that out. Because if you're somewhere where you have to question your participation in this democracy, you are questioning your validity as a human being. And a vote for Joe Biden is not going to help you. I saw something this morning on one of my previous videos that somebody left a comment. I don't trust Joe Biden. I was like, cool. Joe Biden does not trust a lot of us either. Why should he? What's Trump? Trump is at what, 71.9, 72 million votes? They don't trust Joe Biden either. So by somebody just randomly saying as a single person, a single voter, I don't trust Joe Biden. Joe Biden has got to be talking to Jill like, what is wrong with... Thank you, Vanessa. Sahara says religion is faulty because it is corrupted by man. Too much to discuss here. However, the rat race has depleted our moral compass and destroyed our families. Sadly, you cannot re-raise grown people. You can't. We try. It's called criminal justice. We try. It's called discipline in schools. And we try to help people. But the alternatives for people that aren't decent, right, trying to correct them, are usually really punishing. They're punitive. And I don't know how you fix that. And I can say, oh, there's a catch-all category of mental health, and we mental health people, and we give them mental health. Like, mental health is such a broad category, and it encompasses so many different specific things. Like, you can't say physical health. We're going to focus on physical health. Is physical health exercise? Is it heart disease? Is it 35,000 different kinds of cancer? Is it diabetes? Is it like, what? Physical health is so many different things. Think about how many different doctors there are. You know, there's doctors for your feet. And if you show a foot doctor your elbow, they'll be like, I don't know what that is. I'm a foot doctor. I went to school for a lot of years because feet. Podiatrists, like, and let me not say, because I know a podiatrist. I mean, I've never seen one. Dr. Renee Settle Robinson, if she's still around, she ran for the assembly many, many years ago. She's a foot doctor. She doctors feet. Feet need doctoring sometimes. I've seen some of your feet. Sandal weather. What do you want me to do? There's so many different kinds, different aspects of physical health. There's a foot doctor, but are there hand doctors? Like, is there a practice? Because podiatrists, unless I'm missing something, I guess I probably could Google it. I'm on the internet. But they're just feet. But I have hands. I use my hands more than my feet because sometimes I'm sitting down. And I mean, I guess I walk. But when I'm not walking, okay, I'm done. Thank you guys. I appreciate you guys listening to me. This was I think it was a necessary conversation. I wanted to just, go on record for telling people how I feel about stuff, if it even matters. Maybe some of you can relate. Maybe somebody that finds this video 27 years from now be like, oh my God, he's right. There are doctors dedicated to feet. You guys have a great day. I'm sure tomorrow, Friday, we'll be back to our old selves and talking about how Trump has destroyed the country. Trump, you got a break today. Karen, can't guarantee you get one tomorrow. We'll see you guys then, 9 a.m.